Syria is preparing for its first parliamentary vote since Bashar al-Assad's ouster, but it's an election without voters. On October 5th, a hand-picked electoral college will select the 210-seat People's Assembly, while President Ahmed al-Sharaa personally appoints a third of its members. Supporters present it as a step towards stability. Critics see it as window dressing, proof that Syria's so-called democratic transition remains tightly stage-managed and far from genuine popular rule. Syria is set to elect a new People's Assembly on October 5th, the first parliament to be chosen since the fall of Bashar al-Assad in December 2024. The vote for members of the parliament will take place across all electoral districts, the state-run Sana news agency reported on September 21st. The announcement comes as the new government seeks to rebuild state institutions and gain legitimacy amid regional and international efforts to stabilise the war-battered country. A third of the Assembly's 210 seats will be appointed directly by President Ahmed al-Sharaa. The rest will be chosen by local committees supervised by the Electoral Commission. The chamber will be tasked with approving legislation aimed at overhauling decades of state-controlled economic policies and ratifying treaties that could reshape Syria's foreign policy. The new parliament is also expected to lay the groundwork for a broader democratic process following al-Assad's removal in December after nearly 14 years of civil war, Sana said. Critics, however, warn that the current system does not adequately represent Syria's marginalized communities. The elections in Syria would not follow a traditional electoral process, which means that not every Syrian will be going to a voting booth, nor will there be political parties or campaign posters. Instead, votes will be cast by various committees, which is why the country's first election after dictatorship is being described as indirect.
The reality in Syria does not permit the holding of traditional elections, given the presence of millions of internally and externally displaced persons, the absence of official documents, and the fragility of the legal structure.
In June, an 11-member Supreme Committee for the People's Assembly elections was directly appointed by Syria's transitional government to supervise the election. In turn, the Supreme Committee has appointed what are known as election subcommittees in Syria's 62 electoral districts. The districts are meant to be weighted by population, so some of them have more than one seat. In the next step, the different district subcommittees directly appoint between 30 and 50 people to represent each seat in their district. These people will form an electoral college, that is, a group of electors tasked with choosing parliamentarians. Once chosen, the whole electoral college all around Syria is meant to number between 6,000 and 7,000 people. According to Sana, Syria's official news agency, the final lists of candidates were published on September 18th. Any member of the public now has 3 days to appeal against any of the candidates they don't think should be there. After electoral college members have been vetted, some will then campaign for seats in the People's Assembly. There are no political parties and the campaigning isn't public. It's meant to take a week and only happens among electoral college members. Finally, on election day, the whole electoral college will vote for 121 members of the new Syrian parliament from within their own ranks. The electoral process has already been postponed. Officials explained that too many candidates were keen to join the electoral college, but they say the voting process should be complete by the end of September. Originally, there were actually 140 seats up for election, but voting has been postponed in several parts of Syria, in the region of Sweda, which is dominated by Syria's Druze minority, and in parts of Raqqa and Hasakeh, which are controlled by Syria's Kurdish minority. This means around 19 seats won't be voted for this month because of security concerns. Sweda witnessed clashes in July between Druze fighters and Sunni Bedouin tribes, while Hasakah and Raqqa remain partly under the control of the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces. Meanwhile, Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa arrived in New York on September 21st for what state media called a historic visit to attend the UN General Assembly, marking the first appearance by a Syrian head of state at the annual gathering since 1967, according to the official Syrian Arab news agency, SANA. The news agency reported that al-Sharaa is leading an official delegation that includes several ministers and senior officials for high-level meetings at UN headquarters. The Syrian presidency said on the X that during his trip, al-Sharaa met with a group of Syrian expatriates in the US. It was emphasized the importance of their role in conveying the true image of the Syrian Arab Republic and expressed his gratitude for their sincere efforts in serving their homeland. As the new Syrian regime is trying to bolster its international presence, the US government announced on September 20th that it is terminating temporary protections for thousands of Syrian migrants in the United States, less than a year after rebels overthrew a decades-long dictatorship in Syria. According to a Department of Homeland Security news release, Syrian nationals will have 60 days to voluntarily depart the US, after which they will be subject to arrest and deportation. DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said in a statement,
"Conditions in Syria no longer prevent their nationals from returning home."
In his second term, President Donald Trump has aggressively sought to remove unauthorized immigrants, including by revoking protections for those under the Temporary Protected Status Program, or TPS. According to DHS estimates, there are more than 6,000 Syrians with TPS designations, which allow people to live and work legally in the country, but do not offer a path to permanent residency or citizenship. Syria was first designated for TPS in 2012, when the country was embroiled in a violent civil war, and has since been redesignated 3 times. Since 2024, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees has reported an increase in spontaneous returns to Syria, a trend expected to continue this year. Despite the returns, more than 90% of Syrians continue to live below the poverty line, and more than half of the pre-war population remains displaced, according to the UNHCR.